delighted. Thank you to Indie Meme for having me.
Can we get another round of applause? I'm sure the audience is going to have a lot of questions, and so we'll start off with a few. My name is Ananya Ravi. I'm one of the programmers for the festival this year, and as you just saw, this is Shuchi Talati. This is her debut feature film. Although you've made a few shots before this that have similarly explored the awkwardness of our sexual experiences with period piece about period sex and May and Ash about an open relationship.
Menstruation, not time period.
So what made you want to explore this topic? And I guess my second part of that question is, in making these short films before a feature like this where you've explored something similar, how did those films hone your craft in building the tension, the lingering gaze?
Well, the first part of the question, what makes me interested in this? I think part of it is not having ever seen South Asians, Indians as sexual beings on screen, and having grown up, some good giggles. Yeah, did we scandalize some people? Come on, I hope so. Thank you. Honesty back there. I think it's really, I went to not a boarding school, but a school much like this, and I'm sure there are many people here who recognize this ethos where as you're like becoming an adolescent and you're like hormones are raging, and there is such an atmosphere of shame around bodies and sex, especially for young women, where your bodies are policed, and we definitely had teachers who measured our skirts and all of that. And I wanted to make films that reflect this world, but also where the storytelling doesn't shame the characters, where the storytelling does not shame Mira for her sexual exploration and treats it as a normal, mundane part of life. So, that's part of what I sometimes see missing. I also, not just in films from our part of the world, I don't really see sexuality often done with the nuance and the rawness and the awkwardness of life. It can be exploitative sometimes, or sometimes it's just, it's a mere plot point, but relationships don't change through that, and that's just not, I'm guessing, most people's experience. It's extremely you're not just physically naked, you're emotionally naked. It's very vulnerable. You can hurt each other very easily, you can withhold, you can express anger, you can do all of these things. So I kind of like to treat sex scenes as a dialogue scene, it's just like it has all the beats of a dialogue scene. And in terms of craft, it is really something that I had to kind of figure out for myself, and on this film I really wish we had an intimacy coordinator, but there are few in India and our little indie could not afford them. But part of what I've, realized, the most important thing is honesty with the actors very, very early in the process. They have the script, they know what's going on before they come to the callback so they can have questions. And Preeti Panigrahi, who plays Mira, before she came for the callback, she's such a Mira. Not only had she read the script, she made her mom and her sister read the script so that they could raise any concerns they had before she came for the callback. But that kind of transparency also talk about my intentions, to say I want to shoot with honesty and rawness, and we're not going to be coy about it, but we're also not going to be exploitative about it. It's very much from a female gaze, and we're going to be very careful about how we shoot it. And at every point, even right up to when we're on set, when we framed shots, we showed them to the actors, so if they didn't like it, they could request a change, and there was one time that Preeti did request a change, and we were happy to do it. So I think it's that, and then the two actors, I have to give them so much credit. They became really good friends through the process, and they made it really fun for each other. In some ways, the intimacy actually ended up becoming some of my favorite scenes to shoot on set, because you send everyone away, and it's just, there's like a few girls, and it was very fun.
You had a mostly female crew, right, when the intimate scenes were shot?
Yeah, for the intimacy we had only women, and I think our set in India was one of the rare ones to have a woman in the grip and electric department. So, yeah.
The, another thing that, as we're talking about this and how you made it comfortable for the actors, even on screen, I feel like the empathy that you had for all of the characters, even in moments where I think as audience members we may have felt uncomfortable, especially with questioning Shree's motives and even especially Anila's motives as a mother. Um, I was kind of curious about how you developed Anila's character and how did that change from when you first started writing to who she is now, who we saw now on screen?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Actually, in the very first draft of the script, there was no Anila. The whole script took place in the school, and the triangle was between Mira, Shri, and a teacher. And I was trying to write a short film to make a proof of concept. So I was writing, but I was like, I can't shoot in a school. It would be too expensive. That's ridiculous. So I was like, I'll write a short film at home with Mira. And just sort of her mom appeared while I was writing this, and then immediately I was like, oh, this is the same film. And it's so much richer and so much more interesting, and all these layers that you can have with your mom that you cannot with a teacher, even if that teacher is a mother figure. And I think, because of that evolution, I think in the very early drafts, maybe it was not so sympathetic to the older woman character. And as I'm writing it, first, I'm much closer in age to Anila than I'm to Mira. And second, I'm just kind of realizing that she's a young woman. She's in her late 30s. She was written as like 39. And it seems like there's not a lot of romance in that marriage. It seems like she's probably not having very good sex, if any at all. And she doesn't seem to have, she's not allowed to have a life outside of her daughter and her husband. And so the unfairness of the sadness of that really like snuck up on me, where it's like, why shouldn't she have desire? Why shouldn't she want to flirt? Why shouldn't she want some attention and have fun? Like, what's wrong with that? And clearly she's not even getting that from Mira, you know? So I think when I found that compassion for Anila, I think that's when really the script came together for me. And that's something that I consciously try to do. I really want to have compassion for all my characters, and whether that's Shri, whether that's Pansal, whether that's Priya, all of them.
Yeah, like the specific place that they're coming from, because I think you were saying before, like Anila, she got married young, and then her whole life became just the kid, right? I think we might open it up for some audience questions. So raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll repeat it. Over there.
Hi Shuchi, thank you for making this movie. I was just having a conversation a few days ago that we don't see a lot of representation in the movies for young girls, especially in the Indian context, and as full beings, like you mentioned. I do have a question. Why was the character of Anila not a working mother, as opposed to, there was a scene where she was asking for money, and that became a conversation much later where it was like Mira like spoke back, oh, you bought that book from his money. So why was Anila not a working woman as opposed to a stay-at-home mom?
Just to repeat for those who may not have heard, the question was, why was Anila not a working mother?
That's a good question. I mean, she could very well have been, but for this particular story, I think where there is this kind of envy that she feels for her daughter, and which is not really a sexual envy, it's really an envy for the opportunities that her daughter will have, partly because she's like fighting for her daughter with her husband to give her those opportunities, those freedoms that she didn't have. And that includes not just being able to explore romance and have a chance to break up with the wrong man, but to also have a career, be ambitious, do things. So my understanding of her backstory is that she just had a child very young, and at that point gave up her career, even though she was totally would have been qualified to do that, and then that just fell to the wayside. I hope that answers your question.
Anyone else?
Yeah, hi Shuchi, lovely movie. But I wanted to ask you a question about, I believe this is placed in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So a mother, I mean, I thought it was the current generation. A mother, would she sleep with a boy whose hormones are raging? And I didn't understand the justification of that. Would she, a mother in the 90s sleep, or, I'm not a prude, but would she sleep with now next to a guy she hardly knows, and he's lusting after your daughter? What was the justification of that? I to get it out.
Well, if you had to.
Oh, yeah. If I could repeat, I guess the question was the choice of having Anila sleep in the same bed as Shri.
If you had to guess, take a wild guess about the justification. Just curious, what are your thoughts?
It creeps me out. I don't even want to have ending, like leaving it for our interpretation, it just makes the mother more creepier.
Well, I guess it depends whether you think that she slept next to him or slept with him. I tend to think it's the former. I'm curious, does anyone else have a sense of why she might have done that?
Well, I feel like it was reversed because the father is sleeping with
Wow, I love that. That interpretation was that the father was maybe sleeping with someone.
We had one here.
What you were trying to communicate, the entire tension. Oh, sorry.
We had one guest there, and then we put in.
Yeah, but I must say that it's a brilliant.
Can you please stand up so we can hear you and see you?
Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Really good movie, and I think I think these kind of movies are very educational for all kind of ages. So I think hats off to you to make that. But I felt the justification was she just wanted to hurt her daughter.
Okay, so I'm going to comment.
Didn't want to sleep with her, and
I like this reverse Q&A.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like there's a strong feelings there. Strong feelings.
I thought it was central to what you were trying to communicate with regards to all this loss that the mother probably felt, and in some ways the envy for like you said, the opportunities for her daughter, and the need for attention and the need for somebody who cared about her. There was all this mixed up emotion in there. It was not meant to be clear cut. It was meant to make you uncomfortable because that's where the mother was in the whole mix of things. And the one comment I wanted to make, really, it's not a question, but
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I just wanted to make the comment that, to your point of the intimacy scenes being dialogue scenes, right? It's rare to see a movie where you really see that done so effectively. I thought with your framing and the way, where the camera is really close to the players, it really did come across as dialogue, and I thought it was very well executed.
Thank you. And I will answer your question. I was just curious to hear what people were saying. I think it's all of those, It's like anger. At first she sees what's going on. The mother is no fool, and so she's trying to stop it by saying the daughter should sleep in her room, and then clearly the daughter's being angry, being a little bit humiliating, saying you snore, and it becomes also a way to get back at her. But I feel like it's also a thing that she does in the spur of the moment. It isn't some wildly calculated thing,
Thank you. Question?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment because at the end of this,
Can you speak loudly? Sorry.
I was just gonna make a comment
when it ended, told my friend the same thing. I said, you know, it's weird. This movie in a Western audience is going to be viewed very differently from an Eastern audience, because I could just see all our young men here just kind of they were just writhing, and I can see like all these people going, oh my gosh, this is incestuous or something odd, you know, and it's not. It was anyway. I could go on, but I'm curious if you've shown this in India, and obviously Indians, honestly, like the whole sexuality thing was brilliant, because I have yet to see a movie which actually does look at the real tension between mothers and daughters and their sexuality, because it is something we're very much taught to repress it, and it's very guarded, and it's very, you know, and so it was so many things here, but I didn't think it was creepy, but I know, I was like, oh my gosh, everyone here thinks it's so creepy.
I guess to summarize your question, it was, have you noticed if Western audiences have seen this film different from South Asian or Eastern audiences?
I mean, before tonight, I haven't had a chance to compare. But yeah, this is the first with a mostly Indian audience. I think in some ways actually it's quite similar. I think there's something about Kani, who plays Anila, her performance, where she does manage to strike this balance between being somewhat inappropriate and flirty, but also being like a mom who seems like overprotective, and is like at each moment she's both overstepping a boundary but also somewhat trying to protect Mira. That she does. So I think many audiences do see that, and no matter what the background. The one thing that I think the Western audiences do find extremely creepy, though this audience did too, is like the cake eating, which is just, which is basically just how we did birthday cakes, and really feeding is like not kinky, which is how I think Western audiences see it, but I think it sort of really puts down your pecking order. You know, the person you feed first is the most important, but it's not like a sexual thing. I think that's probably the thing that gets misread the most.
But it's who got the cake first.
Exactly.
That's what the whole point is.
Exactly.
How many more questions do we have time for? 2 questions? Okay. We'll go here and then there.
Go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for, I think that among a lot of audiences, even people who consider themselves very progressive, like the topic of our parents' sexuality, like viewed from the parent-child relationship, it's very taboo and makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. So I really appreciate that you explored that. And my question is sort of related to that. As you were writing the character of Anila, did it kind of cause you in any ways to kind of like reflect on and evaluate the relationship that you have with your own mother, and like thinking about her sexuality? And like, did you ever have any conversations with your own mom about that while you were writing this? Or I'm just curious if that's like come up at all in the time since you wrote this.
Thank you. Great question. Did everyone hear that?
Okay. To summarize the question, did you think about your mother's sexuality as you were writing Anila's character?
Yeah, actually. Never. But no, more seriously, I think once it became the mom character, and I was like, you know, the structure of the story was there, I actually spoke to several of my friends' moms and my own mom, because I think most of these moms that we knew, they had their kids in their early 20s. You know, all my friends in high school. And there were those aunties who would always come and drop off their sons and looked a little cute, and they would like hang out and talk to the senior boys, or there were always those teachers, those young teachers at school who would, you know, show a little cleavage or share their lunch with the senior boys. So, and as a teenager, you really, it's so gross. You're like, get a life. You know? But kind of like revisiting when it's like easier to have these conversations with these women when you're older and in your 30s, and like to really be like, what was it like for you when you got married? You know, like what was like. Uh, I was a teenager in the 90s, which was a time of great change in India. The Indian economy was opened up to Western exports. So, you know, suddenly, like, you could buy your jeans and you could buy your Levi's, you could go to McDonald's, and, like, for some of us, wearing these Western clothes and wearing a mini skirt or a skirt became a way to express our rebellion. And there were some moms who wanted in on that, you know. They wanted to experience what felt like a different kind of freedom. And I remember being so judgy of those women, and then kind of re-looking at it and be like, oh my God, like, I'm 39, so I'm just like, that's insane to me that I was so judgy of these young women. So yeah, it did really make me reconsider what their youth was like, if they were children when they were having kids.
One right there.
Hi. I have kind of a loaded question for you.
Go for it.
First of all, I think your movie is beautiful and it's art. And I wanted to know if you really want people, the audience, to interpret things the way you thought they would, or the way, if there a way that you want people to interpret it. And the reason why the question is loaded is because I'm an artist, a visual artist, and I've written a book called The Magic of Modern Art. And one of the big points of it is that once it's out of the creator's hands, it's really, the art is between the audience and the art. And it's not really up to the creator anymore and how it gets interpreted. But I want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, great question. In some ways, it depends on the art. You know, some art remains. Of course, it's always you release it into the world, and then the dialogue is between the piece and the audience. But then there's some art that leaves more room for interpretation, and then some that leaves less. And I like to think that I'm very clear about what I'm saying, you know, and yet there is room for interpretation with all of the characters, and I enjoy that. I think of that as room for audiences to bring themselves into the picture. I hope it's also a film that takes you back to your youth, makes you think of your mom. There are so many people who come up to me and be like, I'm gonna call my mom. And so I think there is that room for interpretation, but I do also have tried to be very clear about what kind of, I don't say what I want to say because it isn't like a message film in that way, which I think if that's the spectrum, the message film is the one that is clearest, you know, leaves the least room for interpretation. So it's not a message film, but I do think I wanted to leave the audience with what I think of as like a residue or a perfume, something that stays with you and lingers and makes you think. And I have a sense of what that perfume should feel like.
Lovely way to put it. I think we're out of time. I'm sorry, but Shuchi is going to be in the lobby right after this, and Anjali's coming up here.
Okay. And can I say one last thing? Can I say one last thing?
Yes, please, go for it.
First, thank you so much for being such a wonderful and loving audience. I really enjoyed watching the film with you. The film is, it's a small independent film, and we're going to have a little theatrical release in September. And we will not have the marketing and other firepower of the big films, and we're going to rely very much on word of mouth. So I want to make a request. If you can go to girlswillbegirlsfilm.com, and sign up for the newsletter. I manage it. I don't spam anyone. I have never sent an email yet, but I hope to when the film comes out, and I hope you will tell other people and ask them to go see the film. It's really important. And if you do Letterboxd or IMDb ratings, do those things. They help us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shuchi. This was absolutely phenomenal.